Welcome to Everything Medical. Today's video, we shall be taking a good look at the histology of the muscle tissue. The muscle tissue is one of those basic tissue types of the body. Histologically, they are being classified into three types. But before we dive into the class, endeavor to subscribe to my YouTube channel and anticipate for more videos on human anatomy. Now, on histological aspect, the muscle tissue have been classified into three aspects, into three categories. Number one is the skeletal muscle tissue. Number two is the smooth muscle tissue. Number three is the cardiac muscle tissue. Now, this is the skeletal muscle tissue. Here is the smooth muscle tissue. This is the cardiac muscle tissue. So these are the histological classifications of the muscle tissue. This muscle tissue classification are classified based on morphological and functional properties. They are being classified based on morphological and functional properties. One of the defining characteristics of a muscle tissue is the ability of it to contract, which is contractility. Contractility is one of the defining characteristics of a muscle tissue. This contractility generates force that moves the musculoskeletal system. It also causes movement on the vasculature, which is the vessels. You get, or lymph vessels or blood vessels. You get, because those hollowed organs has a particular muscle tissue type, which is the smooth muscle. What do I mean by saying it generates force that move the muscles, that move the musculoskeletal system? It is because of the skeletal muscle tissue. And also multiple organ system, which is the what? The cardiac muscle tissue. So that is why it has to contract. So contractility is one of the defining characteristics of a muscle tissue. This contractility is being pioneered by a specialized protein filament known as the myofilament. The myofilament. The myofilament is a specialized protein filament that initiates contractility of a muscle tissue. This myofilament generates an organized structure. It creates an organized structure that helps to lengthen and contract the muscle. So the myofilaments are divided into two individual protein filaments, which is the myosin and the actin. The myosin is thick, the actin is thin. As we proceed on this class, we are going to be taking a good look at them. Now, on the overview, that is all the overview. But important to note, the muscle tissue has a specialized muscle cell, which is the myocyte. The myocyte. The myocyte is a primary muscle cell that is found in the muscle tissue. You get. Recall that in a developmental aspect, the muscle primarily developed from the what? From the mesoderm. The mesoderm. The muscle developed primarily from the what? The mesoderm. Mesoderm. But you have to note that it is not all the muscles that develop from the mesoderm. The intraocular smooth muscle develop from where? From the ectoderm. This is for intraocular smooth muscle. Now, the myoblast, which is the embryonic muscle cell, develop from the mesenchyme. Develop from the mesenchyme. So these are the developmental aspects of the muscle tissue. So that is all about the overview of the muscle tissue. how the muscle tissue is being classified histologically into three aspects, which is the skeletal muscle tissue, the smooth muscle tissue, the cardiac muscle tissue. Their classification is based on morphological and functional properties. Okay, now let's delve into another outline that we shall be discussing, which is the primary characteristics of the muscle tissue. Primary the primary characteristics of a muscle tissue, number one is contractility. Number two is excitability. The number three is extensibility. While number four is elasticity. Now let's take a good look at these primary features or characteristics of the muscle tissue. Now, in respect to contractility, the contractility is the universal muscle cell property because every muscle here must contract. That is why it is a universal muscle property. It's like what we normally say about the ATP, which is the universal energy currency or the universal energy currency of the body. So contractility is the universal muscle cell property because all the muscle here must contract, be it skeletal muscle, be it smooth muscle, be it what cardiac muscle. They must undergo contraction because they have the protein myofilament, which is known as the what? The actin and the myosin. That contractility is the universal energy, is the universal muscle cell property. You get? And recall that why does it contract? Because it has a specialized protein filament known as the what? The myofilament, which contains the myosin and the actin. The myosin and the what? Actin. Myosin and what? Actin. Myosin is thick, while actin is what? Thin. As we proceed, we are going to be looking on them individually. In respect to excitability, excitability is the ability of the muscle tissue to respond to stimulus. What are those things that can trigger to their stimulation? You get? Number one is mechanical factor, electrical factor, and hormonal factors. Those factors can trigger the excitability of a muscle tissue. Get that, which is the ability of it to respond to stimulus or stimuli. The third one is extensibility. Extensibility simply means the ability of a muscle tissue to do what? To extend and stretch. Ability of it to extend and stretch or undergo stretch. Okay? The elasticity, which is one of the features of the muscle tissue, is the ability of the muscle tissue to do what? To return and recoil to its normal position. Is the ability of a muscle tissue to recoil and return to its normal position when tension is applied. Get? So that is all about the primary characteristics of a muscle tissue. What we shall be looking on to now is the functions of the muscle tissue. The functions of the muscle tissue. Stay tuned as we keep journeying on the histology of the muscle tissue. Now, we have the functions of muscle tissue. Number one is movement. Number two is stability. Number three is control of body passage and opening. Body passages openings. Number 4 is heat production. Heat production. Now, these are the functions of the muscle tissue. These are the what? The functions of the muscle tissue. Now, in respect to the movement, how does the muscle tissue aid in movement? How does it aid in movement? You get? How does it aid in movement? What it does is that it exerts physical force on the bone, thereby making you to move. It exerts physical force on the bone, thereby making you to move. That is how it aids in what? In movement. Now, in respect to the stability, the muscle tissue stabilizes the body. Number 1, it provides support for the skeleton. That is how it stabilizes the body. Number 2 is that it maintains the body posture. That is how it stabilizes the body. It also provides or stabilizes the joint. That is how it stabilizes the body. It provides support to the muscle tissue. Provides support to the skeleton. It stabilizes the joint. You get? It stabilizes the joint and also helps you to maintain posture. That is how it stabilizes the body. Now, in respect to control of body passage and opening, how does it control the body passage and opening? This is how it works. It controls the body passage and opening by creating the diameter of the blood vessel via vasoconstriction and vasodilation. It creates the diameter of the blood vessel via vasoconstriction and vasodilation. It also helps in movement of food on the GIT tract or the alimentary tract via peristalsis. That is the function of the smooth muscle tissue. Now, in respect to, before we delve into heat production, let's finish the control of body passage and opening. It also controls the sphincter of the body. You get the sphincter of the GIT. You know, there's so many sphincters in the GIT, such as the pyloric sphincter, the anal sphincter, the ileocecal sphincters, the ampulla of Vater. There are plenty sphincters, so it controls them, and that is another function of the smooth muscle tissue. That is another function of the what? The smooth muscle tissue. Now, in respect to heat production, yes, muscular contraction generates heat. They do what? They generate heat. That is why it aids in heat production. When you exercise very, very well, you discover that your body will begin to produce heat, which also tends to produce sweat. You get? So continuous muscular contraction does what? Generate heat. So these are the functions of the muscle tissue. Now, let's take a good look at another outline. The another outline that we shall be looking onto is the classification of muscle tissue. Classification we have number 1. The muscle tissue is classified according to morphological and functional properties. Number 1 is skeletal muscle tissue. The number 2 is smooth muscle tissue. Smooth muscle tissue. The number 3 is cardiac muscle tissue or the myocardium. Cardiac muscle tissue, which can be called the myocardium. Now, let's take a good look at the skeletal muscle tissue. This is the skeletal muscle tissue here. It is a type of muscle tissue that is striated and under the control of the body consciousness. So, which means that it is voluntary. It is striated. They have striation. These are their striation. It has what? Striation. You get. And the cell that is found on the skeletal muscle tissue is long and multinucleated. So the skeletal muscle tissue has a long and multinucleated what? Cell. It is striated and it's also what? Voluntary, which means it's under the control of the body consciousness. Where is it found? It is found in the bone, which is the skeleton. It attaches to the skeleton to make a movement, to make a certain move. You get? So that is what the skeletal muscle tissue does. You get? So it is striated, it is what? Voluntary. And it contains nucleus. These are the nucleus. It contains nucleus because it has to be alive. Anything that has nucleus is alive. So at least it has what? A nucleus. You get? Which helps on its activities. And it is long. The cells are long. These are the cells. You get? A long and multinucleated cell. Okay. So that is all about the skeletal muscle tissue. One of the primary functions of skeletal muscle tissue is aid in movement. Recall that it does not only found in the bone, which is the skeleton, it is also found in other structures, such as the eye. You get? So that is how it works. Okay. Let's quickly take a good look at the smooth muscle tissue. The smooth muscle tissue, here it is. The smooth muscle tissue is found in the walls of the blood vessel and hollowed organ. It's found in the walls of the blood vessel and hollowed organ. It is non-striated, does not have any striation. You get? It does not have any what? Striation. And it is also involuntary. The smooth muscle tissue can be called the visceral muscle tissue. It can be called the visceral muscle tissue. Viscera, which involves those soft tissue organs, the hollowed organs, the intestines, and the blood vessels. You get? So it is non-striated. There's no striation. It is also involuntary, which means that it is not under the conscious control of the body. You get? And some smooth muscle tissue has an intrinsic ability to contract on their own. And that phenomenon is called automaticity. They undergo automaticity, but it is not all of them. An example of the smooth muscle, or the place that the smooth muscle that is found, which undergoes that automaticity, is on the GIT tract, particularly the esophagus, by the mechanism called peristalsis. They undergo automaticity, but it is not all of them. Some of them undergoes what? Automaticity. They generate their contraction on their own. Example is peristalsis. Now, where can we find the smooth muscle tissue? We can find it in the what? In the ureter. Because it plays a propelling role. You get? It plays a what? A propelling role. It can be found in the ureter. It can be found in the duct of some glands, or glands, all of them. You get? It is found in the duct of glands, because duct contains a secreted fluid. You get? So it helps in propelling them out. That is why it's found in duct of glands. It's found in the what? Ureter, so that urine can easily pass out. You get? Now it also found, or it also plays a role in expelling contents, you get, such as in the uterus, because during delivery there is always a contraction of the smooth muscle in the what? Uterus. So it is found in the what? In the uterus, where it aids in delivery. because there's always a contraction of those smooth muscles. It's also found in the what urinary bladder, where it helps in voiding the urine out. So that is their expelling content function. The first I said was propelling content. They propel something. It's also now in respect to the propelling content, it's also found in the alimentary canal, which is the GIT. You get, because those peristalsis is just like a propelling content, because the food from the oral cavity, which is the mouth, propel downward by a mechanism called peristalsis to the stomach. So those are the activities of the what? The smooth muscle tissue. And the smooth muscle tissue contains what? Nucleus. Contains nucleus. Contains what? Nucleus. And as you can see, it is fusiform in shape. You get, they are being arranged in a sheet-like appearance in the walls of the hollowed organ. You get, they are being arranged like a sheet in the walls of the hollowed organ, and it appears like a fusiform in shape. It contains the nucleus. You get, that is why it's able to do what? To perform its work. Now, the next we shall be taking a good look at is the cardiac muscle tissue. Here is the cardiac muscle tissue. The cardiac muscle tissue is peculiarly for heart. It is found in the heart only. It is peculiarly in the heart. That is why it's called the myocardium. Now, it contains a branching cell. This is the branching cell. Branching cell. It contains a what? A branching cell. It also has an intercalated disc. This is the intercalated disc. It has an intercalated what? Disc. It also has a nucleus and a myocyte. Myocyte is always the specific primary muscle cell. Now, one of the features of the cardiac muscle is that it is involuntary and it is striated. Why is it striated? There is a striation on it because they contain a regular sarcomere, because the actin and myosin myofilament of the muscle are arranged in a regular pattern of functional subunits called the sarcomere. The sarcomere. The sarcomeres. Any muscle that is striated, know that it contains a regular arrangement of the actin and a myosin myofilament in a functional subunit known as the what? The sarcomere. But any muscle that is not striated, the sarcomere is typically arranged irregularly. That is the difference between a striated muscle and non-striated muscle. A striated muscle, their sarcomeres are arranged in a regular pattern. While non-striated muscle, their sarcomeres are arranged in an irregular pattern. Irregular functional subunit what? Pattern. That is how they are being what? Arranged. So you can deduce the difference between a striated muscle and non-striated muscle. So the cardiac muscle is what? Striated. You get, and it is involuntary. It is not under the conscious control of the what? Of the body. Get. It contains an intercalated disc, a branching cell. Now, when there is a wave of contraction in the heart, which is the heart muscle tissue, there is that wave of contraction always flow to all of them. As they are branched like this, it does not mean that they have individual contraction. No, they contract uniformly. They contract what? Uniformly. And the heart muscle can beat on its own. It have a self-excitable tissue which makes it to beat on its own, thereby generating their own contraction, which is the what? The pacemaker cell. The pacemaker cell is a self-excitable tissue in the heart that makes it to contract on its own without any external influence. But there are some factors that could influence such contractility. Number one is autonomic nerves, some hormones, local metabolites, and some substances that can influence or that can influence such phenomenon. because it obeys the rule of what? Automaticity. It can generate its own contraction. So the heart muscle is 100% what? Automaticity, because they can contract without any external influence, because they have a self-excitable tissue called a peacemaker cell. It's an intrinsic self-excitable tissue, which is the peacemaker cell. So that is all about the classifications of the muscle tissue, which is the skeletal, the smooth, and the cardiac muscle tissue. I've told the difference between the striated muscle and non-striated muscle in respect to their sarcomeres, because the sarcomere is the functional subunit that contains the actin and myosin myofilament of muscle tissue. Now let's take a good look at this diagram. This diagram depicts the gross structure of the muscle tissue and their surrounding connective tissue. Gross structure So this diagram shows the gross structure of muscle tissue and the connective tissue that it has. You get. So that is how it does what? It works. Now, important to note, this structure here is showing particularly the skeletal muscle tissue, because the smooth muscle tissue nor the cardiac muscle tissue does not attach in the bone, because this is a bone. So here is a bone. Let's be precise, which is the femur. Okay. What connects muscle to bone? What connects muscle to bone? The answer is the what? The tendon. Tendon connects muscle to bone. So here is the tendon. Okay. Now, the whole muscle is made up of multiple muscle fascicles. The whole muscle is made up of multiple muscle fascicles. I'm talking of the skeletal muscle tissue. You get. They're made up of what? Multiple muscle fascicles. Now, this is the muscle fascicles. All these things here are muscle fascicles, which is being zoomed up here. So it is one of it that was zoomed up to see it clearly. So this is the muscle fascicles. Muscle fascicle. All of them here are what? Muscle fascicles. So the whole muscle is made up of what? Muscle fascicles, multiple muscle fascicles. As we proceed, you come to understand the meaning of muscle fascicles. They are just bundle of individual muscle fibers. You get. Now, the muscle fascicles, you get, is being surrounded by what we call the epimysium. The epimysium is an external sheet of connective tissue that surrounds the whole muscle. It's an external sheet of what? Connective tissue that surrounds the whole muscle. This is the epimysium. This is a covering. It wraps up the muscle. So it's an external sheet of connective tissue that surrounds the muscle. So this is the epimysium. This is like a sheet. The epimysium. Recall that the deep fascia also covers the muscle. After the tendon, after inserting in the bone by a tendon, it's also being covered by the nest with the deep fascia. So this is the deep fascia. The deep what? Fascia. Is being wrapped up by the what? Epimysium. You get? Because the epimysium is an external sheet of connective tissue that surrounds the what? The muscle tissue. Or it surrounds the what? The muscle fascicle per se. Do we get? So the next we shall be looking on to is the muscle fascicle. But before that, the epimysium contains collagen what? Fibers, which becomes continuous to the periosteum of the bone. You get? They contain what? Collagen fibers, which becomes continuous with the periosteum of the bone. I'm talking of the what? Epimysium, which is the external sheet of connective tissue that wraps up the what? The muscle tissues. Now, the next is the what? The muscle fascicles. All these things here are muscle fascicles. They are multiple, they are numerous. You get? So they are what? Muscle fascicles. What is a muscle fascicle? What is a muscle fascicle? A muscle fascicle is an individual or is a bundle of individual muscle fiber. Is a bundles of individual muscle fibers, which is the what? The muscle fascicles. You get? The muscle fascicles is being surrounded by the perimysium. The perimysium. This is the perimysium. Inside here is the perimysium. The perimysium is a thin sheet of connective tissue that surrounds the muscle fascicles. You get? This epimysium wraps up the muscle, while the perimysium surrounds the what? The muscle fascicles. You get? Recall that the epimysium also helps in separating individual muscles together. It helps in separating individual muscles what? Together. Now, the perimysium is a thin sheet of connective tissue that surrounds the what? The muscle fascicles. Do we get? And inside here contains the blood vessel. This is the blood vessel. This is the what? The blood vessel. You get? So the next we shall be looking on to is the muscle fibers. The muscle fibers. But recall that the perimysium becomes continuous with the epimysium on their end. On their end. Because the epimysium wraps up the muscle together, while the perimysium surrounds the muscle fibers. So they become continuous on their end. Do we get? So the next is inside here is the muscle fiber, which is known as the muscle cell. This is the muscle fiber stroke cell. Why do we call it muscle fiber? Pay attention. A muscle cell is a muscle fiber is an individual muscle cell. A muscle fiber is an individual muscle cell. Look at the muscle cell or the muscle fiber cell. It is being zoomed up so that you can see other structures inside it. So the muscle fiber is known as the what? The muscle cell. Why is it called a muscle fiber? It is called a muscle fiber because they are so long. That is why it's called a muscle fiber. So muscle fiber is same thing as what? The muscle cell. You get? And this muscle fiber is being encased or covered by a muscle cell specialized cell membrane known as the sarcolemma. The sarcolemma. This is the sarcolemma. The sarcolemma is a specialized muscle cell membrane that covers the muscle fiber. You get? It covers the muscle fiber. And the muscle fiber is being surrounded by the endomysium. The endomysium. The endomysium is a thin sheet of areolar connective tissue that surrounds the muscle fiber. It becomes continuous with the epimysium and the perimysium. It also contains the blood capillaries. It contains the blood capillaries. This is the blood capillaries. Blood capillaries. It contains the what? The blood capillaries. You get. Now, this muscle fiber contains several hundred and thousands of myofibril. The myofibril. It contains several thousands and several hundred of myofibrils. So this is the myofibril. The myofibril. You get. The myofibril is a long functional subunit that contains the muscle myofilament in a muscle tissue. It contains muscle myofilament in a muscle tissue. What are those muscle myofilaments? It is the myosin and the actin. The myosin and actin are those protein filaments that initiate contractility of the muscle tissue. Now, this is the myosin. This is the actin. You get the myosin and the what? Actin. Both of them are called muscle myofilaments. Muscle protein myofilaments. What do? They initiate the contractility of the muscle tissue. Here is myosin is thick, while actin is what? Thin. You get. Recall that the myofibril is being surrounded by the sarcoplasmic reticulum. You get. Surrounded by the what? Sarcoplasmic reticulum. So you have seen how the muscle skeletal tissue is being partitioned from the covering of the epimysium to the to the muscle fascicles, from muscle fascicles to the what? Muscle fiber, from muscle fibers to the myofibril. Myofibril contains the muscle protein myofilament, which is the myosin and the what? And the actin. I believe we have done justice to this area of the muscle tissue. We have discussed the histology that is associated with the muscular tissue. Thank you so much for staying into this class. We have discussed all, and I believe you understood it. And never to subscribe so that you get notification when I upload video on human anatomy. Thank you so much for watching.